Hello again, folks. This chat to myself and perhaps a few others out there in internet land takes me back a long ways, actually, to where this whole coffee chat conversation began. It really began, I think my very first one had to do with desire. It might have been the very first one, actually, if I really look back. And some of these things are worth a revisit because, further thoughts and greater clarity and whatnot, right? Well, while I was just sitting here this morning, I was thinking of something to say, and I thought that, desire probably has got to be connected with need in some way because, if we evolve in a certain way to have certain tendencies, there has to be, a sort of a usefulness, a vestige of usefulness to why it is that we are the way we are. And I thought about that. So I thought about desire, then I started thinking about need and what it is that we need. And out of this line of thought came maybe a greater understanding, a potential greater understanding, or at least food for thought in terms of how it is that we are and how it is that we interact with others. And you might ask, well, Steve, what's the importance of this? Well, it could just be entertaining. It is for me and for probably three or four other people in the world. But also we can, to understand our motivations is to understand ourselves greater. And of course, to understand the motivations of people in general makes it easier for us to get along with people, I think, if we somehow align ourselves with those motivations. So I'm going to sort of muse here aloud as to, with a few little doodles that I wrote down on a piece of paper here. And what is it that we need? Because, and where does this all stem out of? Well, when I asked that question of myself, I said, well, what we really need is that which sustains life. I mean, if we're here and we want to live, then what we really need is what sustains life for us. So, a trip to Hawaii we don't really need, but something to eat over the course of several days or something to drink and air to breathe and so on we actually need. So those are basics, right? And the question is, how do these needs get fulfilled? Well, built within us, I would say, in answer to that question, what I found was that we have internal drives, very physiological drives. Like we have this thirst that will come up when the body is asking for the need of water. If we hold our breath long enough, all of a sudden we want a gulp of air, right? That's basic drive. We get hungry for food when our body is in need of food. And we also have sex drive. Now that's an interesting one, which I'll come back to a little bit. We also have a drive to be comfortable. We rather be comfortable than not be comfortable. And this is a drive to help us protect ourselves from elements. You might say the elements of the natural world. And also the drive to be safe from danger, from imminent danger, such as, building a hut so that at night the lion can't get in at us while we sleep and so on, right? So it's not only the natural forces of the rain and the cold and everything. It's also the other predators, other human predators and other animal predators that might come at us. And that extends out into modern medicine with germs, protecting ourselves against germs and what have you. Now, the basic needs for the individual, I would say, are on a higher order than the basic need for society. And we see this with, the sex drive, right? The sex drive can be very extremely strong, but it can be tempered and it won't kill the individual life. So there are people who deliberately decide to abstain from sex for their life and they can live, long, wholesome lives. But they can't abstain from, as far as I don't agree. I've heard stories of people going without food and water and so on for quite a long time. But there comes a time when that is needed. I haven't heard of anybody who can hold their breath indefinitely, for example. But they can abstain from sex, at least as far as we know. But nevertheless, the reason that that drive is so strong is because if it wasn't the case, then probably none of us would be here. So it has to be there to sustain. It's part of the life-sustaining force of the tribe or of the species, right? Not so much the individual. Now, how is it that we get what we need? Like there's the food, there's the water, right? There's the land on which to grow the food. There is the which individuals we're going to mate with and all this sort of thing. Well, there is basically two ways as I see it, and they have different varieties, but and I think one comes out of the other. The first one I would say is competition. Now, competition, I'm not going to, there can be versions of competition. There can be coercive competition, and there can be voluntary competition, which is really, think about it, not really competition because it's purely voluntary. It's not the pure form, anyways, of it. And examples of competition would be what comes out of that, anyways. What comes out of competition are things like fashion, food display to invite people, and of course, the fashion is a way of inviting in a competitive world. There is innovation. There is gathering of resources. And a lot of these don't have to be coercive, but they can be coercive in situations like war, rape, theft, and so on. And these are competitive drives that take place within, or competitive strategies which take place within social groups, right? And individual on individual as well. And the other form of gathering these resources is, or of fulfilling these needs, is through the efforts of cooperation. And cooperation results in interchanges like free trade, right? Or the understanding of empathy and the understanding of the importance to get along for the benefit of the individual. Now, I would say the reason that I would say that this cooperation actually comes out of the competitive nature is because at the heart of it, we all want to take care of ourselves, right? At the end of it all, we want to take care of ourselves. So it's like an evolutionary strategy which realizes that it's actually more beneficial to be cooperative than to be purely competitive, especially competitive in a coercive nature. Because if by being nice and cooperative, I get to participate again, then that's beneficial. So, for example, if I was to be of the nature that raping people was the way to get sex, then probably there wouldn't be cooperative effort again, right? It would have to be a war each time. Or if I was to think that somehow to get my food I must steal it, then I'm going to be seen as a pariah in the society and driven out and so on. So the force then is to cooperate with those who are helpful. And also we learn over time through evolutionary strategies and just evolution works in that somebody realizes that this is a better way of doing things, and so that branches off there, right? But to realize that by working together at times, like if you're going to put up a beam from one side of the wall to the other, and you can't be in two places at once, then it's a good idea to have the efforts of somebody else to hold up the other end of the beam while you put up this end of the beam, and that way it gets done. So what that means then is pure cooperation is that you're going to help that guy out sometime when he needs a hand, or you're going to give him some compensation for that. It's like, it's that give and take. But at the end of the day, it is all going back to the service of what is desired, which is based on, to I think a great degree, what is actually needed. Those basics. If we think of things like hunger, thirst, dwellings, we see this in the desire for this gets exploited, right? Because all kinds of drinks are produced, all kinds of foods are produced, all kinds of dwellings are produced to satisfy this desire and all the different fetishes and sort of unique tastes that people have within that diversity of or that sort of basic desire, but the diversity of flavors that flow out from that. And of course, the whole sex thing, well, that has to do with um, a great degree of dance, you might say, in terms of, because that is certainly a very competitive field, because there is very often just in a given area there might be one individual who is the apple of many people's eye, and which one gets to end up with that mate has a lot to do with competition, right? And then you see a lot of things flow out of that, like fashion, for example. So ladies traditionally would dress up to be the attractive um, mate, right? To attract the largest amount, the most powerful mate for her and her future family. And then the guys, they would all, do what they could, like in terms of their prowess and their accumulation of resources and their strength and whatever, that would be the most attractive for that woman. So each one has their strength in their ability to attract, and and we see that what flows out from that is whole industries geared for that, bridal industries and fashion industries and makeup and cosmetics and perfumes and all that sort of stuff. And on the other side, there's big trucks, and there's careers, and there's sports games, and all kinds of things to make the man look strong. And this is a very natural order. It's a competitive yet cooperative blend, right? It's like it's like advertising. Advertising puts out a headline so that you will look at the content, right? And human beings display themselves not unlike peacocks, in that they would display themselves so that people will cooperate with them and actually look and maybe get involved, which is different than the old competitive, strictly competitive warrior type, which was, I want a wife, so I'm